Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of The Emotional Revolution of Modern Man, a podcast by me, Vincent Hedges. Want to start off just by saying a big thanks to the people who have responded to the first episode, and also just those who have listened to it. I really appreciate that some people are giving it a chance and having a listen. I really feel like it's important, and it's just really nice to have some feedback, sort of reflecting the same sort of sense of relevance to what the subject matter is. And this is meant to be a discussion, so I am definitely welcoming anything that people have to say. I'm going to read a couple of comments that I've received back from the last podcast, and just to let you know, if you haven't heard the first podcast, it is available here on YouTube and on SoundCloud, and you can listen to that. It's probably not completely important that you listen to all these in sequence. There may be some continuity pieces there, but I don't intend for them to be like cliffhangers or anything. Like you'd probably be able to glean something, hopefully, from each episode unto itself. But the last episode, the first episode, was a bit of an introduction. I read from a couple of books, and we just talked a little bit about the boy code, or man code, I guess. The code that we've all kind of been taught, most boys in our society have been taught to not really feel much, not know how to express their feelings when they do have them, to be tough and stoic. And really, we just talked a little bit about some of the statistics around what that means for adult males, and really it's affecting our health, emotional health. It's affecting our physical health. There's a deep sleep, a silence that we live with discomfort and pain, both emotional and physical, and without the ability to express it or to show vulnerability. So that was sort of the gist of what we touched on the last episode. Someone who I love very, very much responded. Here's my sister, Christina. She wrote, some real truths shared in your readings and personal reflections. I hope the discussion gets started. Much of what you talked about is very relatable to the work I do with teen boys who are struggling with substance abuse. Substance use is their attempt to find a solution to the emotions they don't know how to express. As they learn to understand and express feelings, it changes everything. Have you seen the documentary called The Mask You Live In? It addresses the issue of masculinity in the U.S. and is very relatable to Canada too. The trailer can be found on YouTube, and I believe the documentary is available on Netflix. So thanks very much, Christina, for that comment, and it's an awesome reference for The Mask You Live In, and I will be checking that out and probably commenting on it. Something I was going to mention right off the top, but I'll mention it now. The background music we're going to hear through this show is by a really great friend of mine named John Chapman, artist named John Robert, and he just put this album out last year, right around this time last year, I think it was 2016. It's called Dear John, a fantastic album. You'll hopefully, I know I'll keep it low in the background as a teaser so that you want to run out, or not run out, but I guess run in to your computer or your phone and go pick this up. You can go check out his website, www.johnrobert.ca. Really moving music. You can find him on iTunes and all that, but I definitely suggest going to the website because it's just a wicked looking site, and it's got all the links to the music there anyways and some lyrics. So, love you, Johnny, and thank you for this background, and thanks for permission to throw it on. I actually got a little notification from YouTube about the music I chose for the first podcast, and they were sort of like, listen, that's copyrighted, we're not going to take it off, but just so you know, you can't monetize this video. I wasn't planning on monetizing it, but I just got a little slap on the wrist there about using copyrighted material. So, you know me, some of you know me, I make a lot of music myself, so I'll probably put my own tunes back there, but I also have a lot of friends who make great music. John Chapman, a.k.a. John Roberts, is definitely one of those great musicians I know. So I'm going to let this play in the background, and I hope you enjoy. I hope it helps set the mood for this. So, getting back to comments. Let's get right to John's comment. John did comment on the YouTube post, and I'm just going to pull his up. He wrote, I can write, record, and produce a song. I can make a piece of visual art. I cannot fix a car. I can't hang a piece of drywall well. The stigma that comes with those 4 facts is that I am less of a man than the ones that don't give a rat's ass about art, but can indeed fix a car or hang drywall. That stigma all rooted in the man code you speak of that has been culturally bred into us. Thanks for a well-articulated podcast. Thanks, John. I really appreciate that, man. And let's see, just another really, really kind words from a great friend of mine, Todd. Miss you, buddy. He wrote, that's great. I love what you're putting out there. What you quoted from the book is so true. I love your thoughts and inspiration to all of us. It is so needed. Not many people take the time to think about others, let alone try to solve or better people's lives. You're an amazing man. Thanks, buddy. With an extraordinary talent, and I love you for making me a part of it. Hope it's okay I shared those private messages, guys. I mean, or at least Todd, that was private message to me. And I'm not trying to, toot a horn here of my own. I just want to just say thanks to the people who are responding and creating this discussion, because this is my higher hope, is that it becomes a discussion where we're actually talking and sharing. And I'm not sure exactly all the avenues to take. All I feel right now is to just do another podcast and hope for more response and more conversation. And thank you to anybody who shared this with somebody else you felt it was going to be relevant to. I really think it's the kind of thing where word of mouth and just letting each other know that there is a dialogue going on is a big part of it. Now we're talking about expressing, our feelings and emotions. And I just want to let you know that, after recording my first podcast, I woke up the next day with a serious vulnerability hangover. If you don't know what that is, that's when you open up to a group of people or even one person. And at first, it feels really good because you get it off your chest, and then you wake up the next day or maybe even just after you leave the room and you think, God, I'm so vulnerable. I just put it all out there. And as a musician, I think I know that feeling pretty well. I mean, it's a common feeling for me. I got some pretty goofball stuff out there. I've got some pretty heartfelt stuff, even right here on the channel, right? Where, I'm just laying it on the line. I'm freestyling and I'm messing it up, or I'm telling you how I feel, or whatever. And you get these vulnerability hangovers, and it's this discomfort that you get from exposing yourself. And it's natural, it's normal. It gets easier over time, I think. But as we're talking about this process of, getting to a place where we can express ourselves, we recognize our emotions, and we can express ourselves, that discomfort becomes a part of your life. When you apologize, that's one of the things that's hard to apologize, because it's it's hard to admit you're wrong, and then you're vulnerable because you're wrong. And so you have this vulnerability hangover about having to admit that you were wrong, right? You're just kind of oh God, and I know that I'm wrong. So anyways, so that's cool. So thanks for the comments. And that was my little comment on my experience. That was my comment back to the show. I had a vulnerability hangover. And I'm thinking about just the way to respond. So you can email me at vincentghedges@gmail.com. You can put a comment in this YouTube post to just put the comment down there. I was also thinking too, you can message me just on Facebook Messenger. If you're my friend, or if you're not, you can probably find me, Vincent Godsman Hedges. And I was also thinking there's those little voice clip things you can do now on Messenger where you can just hit it and talk. If you feel like leaving a voice comment for the show, please go ahead and do that. And I have the capability here in my studio to just play that on the show. And if you're comfortable with that, please, with all the comments as well. I took a chance with these three. It's my sister and two of my really good friends. So I kind of went out on a limb with reading their comments. But if you wouldn't like me to read the comments, if you're sort of feeling like it's something private that you just wanted to say to me, or just add to the discussion online, just let me know. Just write private, or please don't share on the show, or whatever it is. But I would like to use the show as also part of the discussion platform, so I will be looking for comments and what people have to say to add in to this thing. So a big part of the format for this is reading. It's reading some books that deal with the topic of male emotional literacy. And there's been 2 books from the last episode. One was Becoming the Kind Father by Calvin Sandborn. And the other was Raising Cain by Dan Kindlin and Michael Thompson. Both fantastic books. I'm not going to be reading as much from Raising Cain this episode, but I am going to continue a little bit more with the first one, which is Becoming the Kind Father. So in this one, he talks a little bit about this part. He talks a little bit about the hazing ritual, basically, that's sort of inherent in being a boy. So I'm just going to start from here. It's from page 10. The hazing. Such cultural messages do not stand alone. The boy code is enforced by a hazing process that trains boys to suppress their emotions and to develop contempt for them. This brutal teasing and shaming begins at about age 5. Fathers, coaches, teachers, peers, and others conduct the boy hazing. Much of the hazing consists of taunting the boy for breaking the 4 code imperatives. For example, never show weakness, no sissy stuff, give him hell, and be a big wheel. Teasing is used to enforce the message that the boy must be tough and not show emotions. He must be cool and in control. He must be a hero. Any man will recognize the common slogans used in the hazing process that enforces the boy code. So tell me if you recognize any of these, okay? Tell me if any of this sounds familiar to you guys out there. Okay, big boys don't cry. Come on, take it like a man. Don't be a chicken. Don't be a mama's boy. Show him your boss. Don't be a sissy. Buck up, you baby. Grow up. Be a real man. Fight like a man. Don't back down. Don't let them push you around. Don't be a pussy. Keep a stiff upper lip. Be cool. Be tough. Tough it out. Hang tough. Be strong. Take charge. Get over it. Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Don't lose your nerve. Don't back down. Snap out of it. Stand up to him. Cut the apron strings. Don't be a dork. Don't be a wimp. Don't be a wuss. Keep a poker face. Don't cry, you homo. Don't be a girl. Don't cry, you woman. You swing like a girl. Don't be a scaredy cat. Get some balls, man. We're counting on you. Be your own man. Stand on your own 2 feet. Suck it up. Shake it off. Take it. Put up or shut up. Talk is cheap. Fight your own battles. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. Get out there and win. Winning isn't the most important thing, it's the only thing. Take control. So he goes on to say, when Mom left us on the first day of kindergarten, when we started to cry, we were admonished. Big boys don't cry. When we were hurt or heartbroken, we were told to tough it out. When our bike was stolen, when Grandpa died, or when our emotions were simply more than our parents could deal with, we were urged to buck up and take it like a man. Often the hazing process is cruel. The classic movie Rebel Without a Cause illustrates the violence involved. Buzz challenges Jim to a teenage game of chicken, when they simultaneously drive cars off a cliff. The first to jump to safety is the chicken. Jim jumps out and lives. Buzz doesn't and dies. Afterwards, Jim explained to his dad why he had to play the game. It was a question of honor. They called me chicken. I had to go, or I could have never been able to face any of those kids again. Jim chose to get in his car and race it off a cliff into the sea rather than be called a chicken by the guys. Even so, Buzz's friends later nailed the carcass of a bloody chicken to Jim's front door. On his way to manhood, a boy undergoes some 15 years of boy code hazing, both subtle and brutal, and ultimately there is a high cost. By adolescence, boys have already stopped trusting other boys, and by adulthood, a young man is unlikely to ever again form an intimate friendship with another man. Most destructively, the boy eventually turns hazing messages onto himself. He learns to routinely greet his sensitive feelings with contempt. This contempt shames him into disowning his feelings and the self from which they come. The result is akin to an emotional clitorectomy. He can no longer feel. Wow. What do you think about that, guys? Any of those phrases ring a bell? What's hard for me is some of those phrases, I hate to say, ring a bell that I've said them. And I may have even said them to my own kids. So that's not an easy thing to take. This show is not about the easy road. Because I think the point is, for me, about this show is most of us guys aren't on an easy road. And when it comes down to that, when it comes down to accepting that it is tough, it is hard, life is a bit hard, but greeting, I think, that harshness with a sense of, so that creates need. That creates a need for some breaks, that creates a need for some sensitivity and understanding from the people around me. And a lot of this comes back to our own fathers. And I just wanted to make something clear about my position on this, because, in the last episode I did mention, my father was someone who was difficult to have a relationship with. I'm not trying to demonize our parents, and our, especially our fathers. It's a firm belief that I have that, our parents were doing the best they could, and they were doing probably a hell of a lot better than their own parents, even the ones who came from awful parents. Dysfunction as a society is just something that's evolving, and I'd like to believe getting better. There were a lot of unhealthy ways that were considered the right way to parent. Spanking and spare the rod, spoil the child, or whatever they used to say. So yeah, I mean, it's and that's what I wanted to bring up. What I brought up in the last episode was that there's research now. There's parenting, there's parenting research that can help us, and just like it's like any other science, guys. In medicine, you go back 30 years, and as much as the doctors now would applaud the heart and the effort by the medical community 30 years ago, they're definitely going to have to update some things and say, that was kind of backwards, or that wasn't working. And we thought that was good for you, but it's not good at all. And that complicates things even more further down the line. And it's the same with this science, okay? And I know sometimes it's difficult as adults to look back at our parents and be like, oh, they messed it up. Because we love them, and we feel like we're pretty good people, right? You look at yourself, and for the most part, even though we may speak to ourselves subconsciously in a negative way, I think that most of us see ourselves as good people, So a lot of that identity relates back, I think, to our own parents, and we don't want to say, well, thanks a lot, Mom, Dad, you totally messed me up. Because that's not necessarily the case, because we take their good attributes and their bad, right? So there's things we love about ourselves and are proud about ourselves, and we know we wouldn't be those things without our parents. And so for that, I'm definitely saying, love to our parents. Let's recognize the position they were in, the world they were in, and the life that they had. And there's another book that has done a lot for me. It's called Letters to My Son. It's by a great author, an incredibly profound guy named Kent Nerburn, and I will put the link to his book in this YouTube thing. So here in this little bit, he's going to reflect a little bit on his own father and what his life was like. And I think it's really important for us to consider this, as we're assessing ourselves as men in this day and age. What's different for us? There's a lot of different stuff for us, and a lot of things that weren't there for our dads and for our parents, our moms as well. Anyways, let's get into this. This is page 9. Here we go. Speaking about his own father. He was born into poverty. His father ran off. His mother died. Before he was even an adult, he was swallowed up into the Great Depression. To get food, he had to work, and to get work, he had to be stronger and work harder. Soon Nazism and fascism appeared on the world stage, and he was called to take up weapons against other men. After the war was over, he came back with nothing, and he had to carve out a place for his family in an economic and social order he had never seen. From his earliest childhood, he had been cut adrift in a world where a person needed to emerge the winner to keep from being annihilated. No wonder his sense of manhood was so deeply tied to his sense of male dominance and mastery. Now, as his body fails him, that sense of dominance and mastery has been replaced by a sense of dependence. He feels purposeless and meaningless. The loss of his job, the loss of his physical strength and sexual powers, the loss of his ability to control the world around him, are the loss of his manhood. He is a shell, living out his days in a benign hopelessness. It did not have to be this way. As his son, I see his real manhood. I see the man who went for days without sleep to help people who had lost their homes to fires and floods. I see the man who worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs to give his children Christmas presents, and who always put his own needs last. I see a man who took his male strengths and he put them in service of a vision of caring and sharing, and nothing can diminish his manhood in my eyes. He was a good man. In a small way, he was a great man. But he cannot see this. He lived in a time when manhood meant maleness, and he measured himself by those terms. But now the times have changed. You were born into a different world and now he's speaking to his own son. You were born into a different world that will present you with different gifts and challenges. A new vision of manhood will be called, for that does not tie so closely into more aggressive and competitive residues of our male character. You will need to search out new ways of expressing strength, showing mastery, and exhibiting courage, ways that do not depend upon confronting the world before you as an adversary. To a great extent, you will have to find the ways for yourself. In times past, there were rituals of passage that conducted a boy into manhood, where other men passed along the wisdom and responsibilities that needed to be shared. But today we have no rituals. We are not conducted into manhood. We simply find ourselves there. When our bodies tell us we have arrived, it is with a desire and a longing and a sense of unfulfilled outreach. But what we think is manhood is nothing more than our maleness coming into full flower. And when maleness operates untempered with moral value, it visits damage upon the earth. I want you to consider this distinction as you go forward in life. Being male is not enough. Being a man is a right to be earned and an honor to be cherished. I cannot tell you how to earn that right or deserve that honor, but I can tell you that the formation of your manhood must be a conscious act governed by the highest vision of the man you want to be. As you reach for that vision, the echoes of the male will always be with you. The competitive, the dominating, the great sexual urgency and desire for outreach will always whisper. But if you are able to transform them, these male attributes will become the true measures of manhood: strength and honor and moral force, courage, sacrifice, and confidence of touch. So acknowledge your male characteristics, celebrate them, honor them, turn them into a manhood that serves the world around you. But do not let them overwhelm you, and do not let those who confuse maleness and manhood take your manhood from you. Most of all, do not fall prey to the false belief that mastery and domination are synonymous with manliness. Be like my father. Be like the generations of nameless men who served as stewards of the age into which they were born and never willingly raised their hands to harm another. Measure your greatness by the length of your reach, but also by the gentleness of your touch. For now, the world needs hands that love, not hands that conquer. Let your hands be among them. Love it. Love it, guys. That was an amazing passage. I didn't even realize how amazing it was until I read it again now. So yeah, how do we feel about that, guys? Do you feel that we're in a different world? That we're in a different world than our fathers? And that world is asking us to be different than our fathers. And, you know, while still maintaining the things that made them great and that will make us great. Yeah, I think that was a really important part to read, and I'm really happy that I did. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about how we get there, right? So here we are. We've been programmed a certain way. We think this way because of the way not only our parents, but our friends and our teachers and our, the other adults in our life, our brothers, whatever, the way they treated us, and the way we learned how to treat other people. So here we are with this head full of destructive tendencies, right? So what do we do? How do we get change to start happening in there? Well, there's a concept about reparenting yourself, a concept that was made known to me when I started attending ACA meetings, and these meetings were Adult Children of Alcoholics. That's the acronym for ACA, or ACA is the acronym for that. It was, I was going to meetings probably 2-3 years, and I may go again, but I was very moved, and it was a huge part of me learning about myself and my emotional landscape, was getting used to this idea of reparenting yourself, of being able to speak to yourself as if you were your own parent. Because sometimes there's deficiencies in the way you were parented, and like we've been talking about, there are ways we speak to ourselves that are negative, and they come from our parents, but also from other people who were, influential in the way we thought. And reparenting yourself is about talking to yourself. It's about taking time to say positive things to yourself. And I don't know, maybe that sounds hokey to you. When I heard it, I thought it was pretty great. Now, you may have heard people do affirmations, so that's one thing. You can put on a pre-recorded thing where someone will be saying positive statements, and you sort of say them back to yourself in your mind or out loud. So that's affirmations, and you can do that. I definitely have a few different affirmations I listen to. I even have affirmations I've written out for myself, and I found that's been pretty good as well. But even on a day-to-day, you can also sort of counteract your negative things you say, like even right when you catch yourself saying them, like, "Ah, you idiot," you can kind of step back for a second if you can get outside that situation, almost as if you're the kind guy, or like, you got your two friends, there's three of you there, and like one of them's kind of an asshole, and the other guy's, a good friend, and sort of the meaner guy is sort of the first to speak. But then if you imagine the second guy sort of being the one to rebuttal with a kinder response, because you can't stop yourself from saying this negative stuff at first. But so you hear yourself saying something negative. If you can step out of that for a minute and just say, actually, you know what? Like for me, I'll be like, you idiot, and I'll be like, actually, Vince, you're tired and you didn't get a lot of sleep. The baby was up half the night, and you're doing the best you can today. I appreciate you even showed up at work today. I think it's awesome you're here. But yeah, you're gonna have to do that again because it's just not right. Things like that, rephrasing it. And then after a while, I found for myself that sometimes that became the first response was, "Whoa, what are you doing there, buddy? Okay, let's try this again," rather than "you idiot" or saying some other derogatory thing, or really berating myself. It's a slow process, and I'm still, definitely someone who deals with negative talk, my own personal negative talk. But as you learn to have the go-to response to being one that is not harsh, but that is kind and understanding, you can start to reprogram your mind. And one thing that I found through ACA was my intolerance of other people was a direct reflection of my own intolerance of myself. My inability to accept vulnerability in my wife or in my kids, when people are getting all weepy around me or complaining around me, and I get all like, "Just shut up! I don't even want to deal with this." Blah. You get this like ugly kind of repulsiveness. You're repulsed by people's vulnerability. That is a direct reflection of my own repulsed nature to my own vulnerabilities. It's my own intolerance of my own weaknesses, right? And as I started to work on that intolerance of my own weakness, I started to see that I was more tolerant of other people's weakness, and I found that I was having more the kind of response that I desired to have around the people who were being weak and vulnerable around me. And so we're talking about emotional literacy, deciphering what's going on inside. I mean, and you feel anger for a lot of things. You might feel really frustrated, and then it makes you angry. I think, just like it was mentioned in the last episode, you start off small. It's just like learning to read. You learn what each sound makes, and then you move on from there to how the sounds work together. So what I would encourage is, when you start feeling these negative emotions, don't just sit with I'm pissed today, or I'm in a bad, I'm a grump today, whatever. Just stay out of my way. I'm in a bad one today. Let's try to ask ourselves, what's behind the anger? What are your needs? Anger is often, is hiding something else. I mean, it is. It's a reactionary emotion to another emotion, right? So what is it? Are you feeling jealous? Are you feeling unappreciated? Are you feeling like you really needed a nap and now somebody has needs that supersede your own needs? A lot of times I feel like it is neglected needs. We have needs, but by being stoic, we don't allow ourselves to have needs. So we stuff it down. And I always get a picture in my head of like those geysers you see in Looney Tunes, right? Where you plug up one geyser and then it just like shoots up twice as high out the other side. And so I kind of get that image when I think about the regular anger management we have. We're like, oh yeah, okay, it's my responsibility to take the kids today. All right, well, I really need a nap, but I'm not allowed to have one, so I'll just take the kids right now. Fine. Yeah. Huff, 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 puff, puff, puff. And you wander off, you take the kids, you stuff that down. And then later on, it's like, you're pissed because you had a need to sleep. You didn't get it. You didn't even say to your wife you needed a quick nap or like needed some time in your own head. So anyways, that's what I'm getting to is, like, let's ask the question behind the emotion. I'm angry. Why? What is this? What is the base emotion for this anger? Right? And do you feel? Here's another question that I want to ask you guys. Do you feel that there is a place in your life for you to feel safe with vulnerability? Not all of us have wives who accept vulnerability in men, right? There's as many women, I'm sure, that buy into the whole boy code as well. I've definitely heard a woman say to me, I hate it when men cry. It really bothers me to see a man cry. I think it's wrong, or it just makes me feel like repulsed. It's not like women are that separate from us and that they're not dealing with the same sort of emotional sort of issues where, you're as hard on, however hard you are on other people is as hard as you are on yourself. So, I mean, that's a human condition. That's not a man condition, in my opinion. But so that's something I wanted to ask too. I wanted to pose to the discussion. Do you feel like you have a safe place to be vulnerable? Do you have a good friend that you just tell it all to? Maybe you have a great relationship with a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister where like that happens. Maybe your wife, or maybe your husband, maybe there is somebody that you can be vulnerable with. But maybe you don't. And that is something to look for and something to try to find, and if it has to be even just yourself, at least you can be vulnerable with yourself. Another question I want to ask is, what factors, when you look at your own life, attribute to your moods? Do you have some crazy commute where you find yourself behind the wheel with all those other jerks out there? Maybe you work for a tyrant. Maybe you're in a situation where you're around toxic people most of the time during your day, and you come home and you try to have an emotionally healthy relationship with your wife and kids, or with your friends or your girlfriend or whatever, and you just feel like you've been just pushed through this filter of like negativity all day long. And so that's another question I really hope we can start asking ourselves is, what factors attribute to our moods, right? Maybe you have a couple beers at night to kind of take off the steam. Maybe you smoke a joint or whatever, and maybe keeps you up a bit later than you expect, and then you wake up the next day, maybe not hungover, but you're like a little blah, and you're like feeling a little foggy in the head, and then first thing on, you got kids, and you're like, I'm a grump today. That was me this morning. I had a beer last night and a small joint, and that was enough for me to lose enough sleep that when I woke up this morning, I was a bit of a grump, and I had to check in and be like, wow, here I am, I want to do my podcast today, and I'm like the big grump when I woke up. And this is another question I was pondering, are there toxic relationships that are dictating your emotional reactions and your physical actions? This is something to look at. And sometimes you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? I know for me, my road rage and road stress was enough that I decided, and also just my work stress, because I worked in construction and I worked with a lot of people who weren't really treating each other nicely. I had to take a big step out. I'm still in construction. I have my own company, but I had to take a step out because I realized the commute was actually, I was not handling it very well, and I was bringing a lot of stress back home, and my work relationships were bringing a lot of stress back home, and my relationships at home, I decided, were going to be number one. So whatever I had to do in my life to get myself emotionally right and make it easier on myself to be emotionally healthy, I wanted to do. So I went into business for myself, which has its own stresses and its own emotional up and down, but I feel more in control of it. And I just want to mention too, and this is something else that's been on my heart about these toxic relationships and these places where we find ourselves being passive to negative situations, being passive to negative emotional responses, just like allowing stuff to just go on, allowing to be treated like crap, or like, being in environments where it's all tolerated. And the more we, if we're passive about it, it's just as much as giving consent. When kids are bullying each other and we say boys will be boys, that's giving consent to the bullying. Right? If we don't stand up for what we believe is right, we're giving consent. We're saying, yeah, it's okay, and it's sending a strong message to the others and ourselves that is okay. And I think that's kind of one area that I'm moving towards is, let's not be passive. Let's be proactive with ourselves and with each other, and let's keep trying to make change. And I know this is the outro of this album, so I know it's telling me that I should probably wrap this show up. This one went by super quick for me. But I just want to thank you guys for listening. Please comment if you wish. Please reply to any of these questions that I'm posing. Let me know if any of this is speaking to you, if you have anything to add. I really like to keep this conversation going. I'm enjoying doing this. I'm getting great encouragement from my friends. My wife has been incredibly encouraging about doing this. So I'm just going to keep doing it and sending out my love and my support to all the men out there and the women and the kids. I mean, we are a family, and we just, I think we can make a better world. And I think we have been making a better world. I'd love to hear your stories, guys. I'd love to hear about any positive changes you've been making. I'd love to hear about any other resources that you guys may have come across, that anyone may have had affected the way they look at their world. And I would just like to thank the authors of these books. The new one that we started getting into today was Letters to My Son by Kent Nerburn. And I will, the subheading is A Father's Wisdom on Manhood, Life, and Love. So I will put the links for that up. I'll put the links to Johnny's album up. And I'll be hitting this mic again as soon as I can. I'll give a little bit of time for this one to go through and for everyone to have a good listen and maybe respond. If you think you have something to add, please leave a message. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.